right, welcome back to the JR Takes Sportscast. Back at you here with Ryan Rogers and Jonah Hoffman. And Jonah, man, a lot can change in 10 days, huh?
Yeah, I mean, what was it? A couple hours after we did the last episode, Geno Smith had signed his deal.
I think it was literally like within an hour when we hit stop on the recording. So.
Yeah, I remember we were texting each other afterward being like, damn it, we should have just waited a couple hours later and we would have had that information and we would have been able to talk about it right on the spot. And that would have been like the first episode we did that covered like a recent breaking news, like live event.
I know. I don't know why the Seahawks always wait so long in the fucking day to make their moves, but they always seem to make them at like 4 p.m. or so. And at that point, you know, you've been watching all these other teams make these moves all day and you're just like, what the fuck, John? Like, sign somebody. And then so you give up and then it's like, oh, now we're doing stuff.
Sorry. Just okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that basically changed the entire dynamic of what we were talking about in the last episode. I know we were talking about, you know, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young. I don't really see that being on the table anymore after not only this move, but did you see we re-signed Drew Lock?
Yeah.
Quickly, though, before we get too far into it, the Geno contract is the most team-friendly quarterback contract I think I've ever seen. His cap hit is barely $10 million for 2023. I thought it was going to be 30 going into the offseason. That's insane that he agreed to it. It's really cool that he's, you know, confident enough to bet on himself and reach these incentives. But man, I'm almost like, Geno, why didn't you get more money out of us?
To me, it seems like Geno was kind of a man of his word. You know, he did say he wanted to pay Seattle back for giving him the chance. And to me, signing a $25 million deal with incentives is doing that.
Yeah, and man, isn't that a breath of fresh air after I always loved Russell Wilson, but every fucking time that guy was up for a contract, it was stressful. And it seemed like he was squeezing us for every last dime, going back to, you know, 2014, 2015 through the first contract. I think a lot of that was his agent.
Mark Rogers.
Yeah, he's kind of infamous for being a dickhead. I think John Schneider even mentioned on a radio call the other day that he said it was like refreshing to not have to deal with, you know, he said it in political terms, but basically the bullshit that he had been dealing with Mark Rogers for a fucking decade. But the biggest splash move the Seahawks made this week was signing Draymond Jones from the Denver Broncos of all teams. Man, their losses are gained just over and over and over again. It's just getting comical at this point. But he was on 710 ESPN, I think either today or yesterday.
Today. No. I listened to it today. I think it might have been yesterday.
Oh, well,
whatever it was. No, maybe it was today.
It might have been this morning that he was on. So
yeah, he was
hearing it. But he mentioned that there was too much drama in Denver last year, and that's part of why he wanted to come here. And it's just so funny.
Yeah, that's crazy. And yeah, he also mentioned that like during the free agency process, they were like playing games with him and shit. And like that just seems like a mess.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the more volatile situations in the league right now. I mean, them and like Arizona, as far as just like drama and, you know, bad vibes is concerned, and, you know, new head coaches. But it was very un-Seahawk like, considering the past, I don't know, 8 off seasons for us to sign a big name, big contract free agent like this on the first day, because the last time I can think we did that was literally Sidney Rice. Like when we gave out a big contract to somebody. We've made a lot, like, because, you know, people forget when we got Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett at the time, they were under the radar moves. Like those weren't big household name players at the time. So it was just kind of a shock that they're like, all right, we're going to throw out a $50 million, you know, 4-year contract for this guy. But that's the beauty of the Geno Smith contract. It's allowing us to make all these moves where if we had given him like what Daniel Jones is getting, like we would have had no room to sign anyone, basically. But
yeah, that's absolutely crazy to me. And what do we have to work with? What is it, like 14
The
something
cap
around
space?
there. Yeah, 14 million.
I have no idea right now because we made a bunch of moves this morning, and with the Devin Bush signing and also Julian Love. Did you hear about that one?
Yeah, the Giants defensive back that you were telling me about.
Yeah, so I guess let's like break down these signings one at a time. But as far as the cap space goes, I got to see an update because some of the contract details still haven't come out. I have no idea what's going on. But another really significant move we made, we signed Jerron Reed as well. To me, that's just solid. We had basically no defensive line depth. We released Shelby Harris. We released, what's his name? Quinton Jefferson. We basically traded Shelby Harris and Quinton Jefferson for Draymond Jones and Jerron Reed. Both those guys are younger, and both of them are upgrades.
And Jerron Reed, we know what we have in him.
Yeah, and his best football came when he was in Seattle. He hasn't done great since he left, but maybe Pete knows how to get the good out of him. But a move we made this week that I really like is the signing of Evan Brown, I believe his name is. Yeah, Evan Brown. He's got the versatility to play center and guard. He's started at both for the Lions, and the Lions have had a really good line for the last 3 years or so. So this guy could end up being our starting center, and he's only getting paid like $2 million. I don't know how we managed to swindle that, but
how old is he?
I think he's 27.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 2 years of experience in the league. Is that what you said?
He
started 24 games.
Yeah, the last 2 years he's been a starter. I'm not sure how long he's been in the league, but Lions fans seem to like him a lot. So I think that's going to be a good move for us, and it also gives us the versatility going into the draft. We should still take a interior O lineman or two, maybe at center, but we don't we're not forced to overdrafting someone in the first round to play center, because I think that'd be really dumb. So I think that's maybe one of the best moves we made this week. And then getting into today, what we've made.
I really like the linebacker signing from
Devin
Pittsburgh.
Bush.
Yeah, because I remember
he's only 24.
And I remember him being a big piece to their defense. What was it when they started off like 11-0 or something?
Yeah.
I feel like I remember he got hurt.
He tore his ACL
towards the playoffs, and then that was like a big loss for them, and then I think they lost right away.
Was that 2020?
Maybe.
Or it was recent. It wasn't that long ago. I
I
remember watching that 11-0 start, though. I was like, this team is such a fraud. that Pittsburgh team with Ben Roethlisberger just walking around like a zombie, throwing hideous checkdowns every play.
I think that was a perfect signing, exactly what I would have wanted us to do, because he's a good enough linebacker to where his name is not like going to break the bank.
Yeah.
I would say he's around a B grade type of linebacker. He's gonna get paid, but
he's got a ton of upside, and we only gave him. I think that's the contract they still haven't given out the details for yet, but it's probably pretty low in compensation. And if we can get him back to the way he was playing his rookie year, his first couple of years in the league, that's a steal.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of curious to see where Bobby decides to go, because I would think that he already got paid by the Rams, so I wouldn't imagine there's going to be a team seeking to overpay how old is he? 32-year-old, 33-year-old linebacker?
Something like that, yeah.
And I would think that Bobby would probably want to come back here, because you see a lot of former Seahawks players coming back because they love the culture so much.
Yeah, and regardless of how they left, too, I don't know if you remember, but there was some drama when Jerron Reed left. Like, he was not stoked with our front office as he left, as often a lot of players are. I think I actually heard Brock and Salk on their podcast this week bring up how the way Pete Carroll kind of treats players like family. It's great, but also when they get cut or traded or moved on from, I think our players feel extra hurt by it. At least they said something along the lines of that. I never thought about it, but I'm like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It's Yeah, it's very similar to a bad breakup. You think like I imagine the players probably look at Pete Carroll and they sort of see I don't want to say father figure, but like
I think kind of though.
I guess a figure of that sort. And when you realize it's the business side of things, then it's like probably crushing
How
moment.
Could Dad
for
do
them.
this to me?
Yeah.
I think there might be some truth to that for sure. But I'm starting to wonder like if Bobby is going to be one of those free agents this year that doesn't sign till like almost training camp. Because I figured it would have already happened by now, and all of the linebackers in free agency pretty much have gotten eaten up. You know, like at the top of the market, even Levante David re-signed with the Bucks. I can't think off the top of my head all the linebackers that were free agents this week, but almost all of them are gone besides Bobby. So I'm just starting to wonder what is going on with that. But another curious move we made today, we brought it up earlier, the Julian Love signing. This is a starting player, you know, like he's not a depth piece really. Like this guy is good enough to the point where he should be on the field most plays this year. I wonder what their plan for him is, because
I wonder if their plan is to cut Jamal Adams.
I've seen a lot of speculation about that, but financially,
I wouldn't do that. I would give him one more year.
Yeah, and financially, it ruins us if we cut him, because like we save $8 million, but the dead cap hit is still insane, and there's another dead cap hit for it next year if we cut him this year. So I think a trade would make more sense if anything, but I feel like you're getting a 5th round pick for Jamal Adams.
Yeah,
right now.
Hold on to him. And if he does pan out this season, there's your run stopper.
And plus I love Jamal Adams, the player. I think Jamal Adams' trade was, it obviously hasn't worked out, but the player himself is fucking awesome. He's one of the most electric players on our team on either side of the ball. Just can't stay healthy. I did see an encouraging update from his Instagram or something of him like running on a treadmill. So I know he's working his way back from that injury, but I can't imagine what that would feel like having your fucking quadriceps disconnected. Like, ugh, that makes me cringe just thinking about it. That's a bad injury. So
yeah,
hopefully he's ready in time for training camp, but we'll see.
I would be shocked, but I say just give him time. I think we'll be fine without him. We played without him basically all of last year anyway. So just, don't rush him back.
We have a tender or a right of first, Jimmy G, a right of first refusal on Ryan Neal. Mm-hmm. So he may be back. He's a restricted free agent. I still don't even really understand what that means or why it happens, to be honest, but I know if another team offers him a contract, like we get the chance to match it kind of thing.
I kind of hope we do. I really like him.
Yeah, he's just been a solid player for us. And that's why I think it's semi-redundant that we signed Julian Love, and it leads to the speculation about Adams because, what's going on with that, having all these starting caliber players and starting caliber compensation at the safety position. It's just kind of odd, but it's not a bad thing when you have more good players in your secondary, so I'm all for it. But I wonder if they're going to move Kobe Bryant back to outside corner, because he didn't play nickel in college. We just were like experimenting with him his rookie year essentially.
What's going on with Trey Brown? I feel like I haven't really heard much from him.
I haven't either. He had a pretty he had the patella tendon injury, which you remember Jimmy Graham had that. Yeah. And this is going way back, but Victor Cruz back in the day, he had that same injury, and he never
ended his career.
Yeah, and he was a really good wide receiver. He was kind of like Odell before Odell. But I think Trey Brown, he wasn't able to come back till like November of last year or something, and he got some playing time, but at that point, Mike Jackson had locked up the left cornerback spot. Obviously, you're not going to take Tariq Woolen off the field. So it's hard to see a place where Trey Brown gets playing time now with who we have in the secondary. But he's still on a rookie contract. We're going to have him. So at the very least, it's like, remember when Walter Thurmond and Jeremy Lane were backup corners? They would start on like 30 other teams.
I was going to say, it's a pretty good problem to have if Trey Brown is your Walter Thurmond or Jeremy Lane, giving you some depth. Because,
that's how we won a Super Bowl, basically.
Yeah.
That's not it, but it was a key part of that team.
Right.
And I remember in the preseason, we just fucking ran circles around every team because our third stringers were like starting caliber players.
Yeah.
Those were really fun times, man.
Those were the days.
Indeed. But the thing is, I really feel like I don't know what the hell John and Pete were putting in their fucking coffee from like 2014 through 2021, but they seem to have like found themselves again in the last year, because every move they're making, I'm like, oh, this is a good fucking like just a good thought process, like draft process wise, or just who they're going after. They're just players that make sense. Every player we picked in the draft last year, I'm like, oh, this makes sense given the state of our team.
When I think of the Seahawks from like 2014 to or basically till Russell Wilson was traded, it reminds me a lot of the era when the Mariners had Robinson Cano and Nelson Cruz. Like they were good, but they like weren't good enough to make the playoffs. And I feel like that's kind of how the Seahawks were. They were good, but they were never good enough to even make it to the NFC Championship.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're analogous to like Bobby and Russ. We had our two mega superstars top at their position or close to it, and then a lot of people around them were mid, as the kids would say.
Yeah, but and again, similar rebuild styles. I feel like after front office for the Mariners realized they couldn't win with Cano and all these veterans that had been on our team for years, we just cleaned house and went on full rebuild. And we didn't go full rebuild with Seahawks, but trading your franchise quarterback is essentially committing to, at the very least, we're probably going to win, or our ceiling is probably going to be 9 games, and it was. Yeah,
it seems like when Pete rebuilds, though, it still leads to a playoff appearance, because the last 2 times we've rebuilt or retooled or whatever the fuck people want to call it, I think after the 2017 season when the Legion of Boom died, and basically we had Earl Thomas left in 2018, but he gave us the finger literally after the 4th game, so that was a rebuild. We were moving on from all of those Hall of Fame level players on defense, and we made the playoffs that year and decided to run the ball every play against the Cowboys and lost, but we still made the playoffs. So it's weird. I feel like 2018, 2022 are similar in some ways, but also quite different. There's not really a comparable year to the one we just had.
Right.
But we're in a really cool spot where we have a bunch of good players. Top of the list is Geno. Geno was on NFL.com's top 100 free agent list. He was number 2 behind only Lamar Jackson. Geno is legit. He's maybe the second best quarterback in the NFC right now. And that's not exaggeration to say. We have one of the best quarterbacks in the conference on a $10 million deal. And we also have the flexibility to move on from Geno if we, draft a quarterback or something. So that's still on the table. But what do you think about the Drew Lock deal? Like, do you think that pretty much wipes out the chance of taking a quarterback at 5, or?
I feel like it does maybe lessen the chances of taking a quarterback early. I do, however, think we have a good shot at taking a quarterback maybe in the 2nd round, 3rd round. I keep hearing Hendon Hooker, and the thought of drafting him in the 2nd does intrigue me. I do worry, though, like if quarterbacks get taken 1 through 4, I kind of question whether or not he will be available by the end of the 1st round. So
yeah, and
it's tough to say.
I guess one thing we haven't even brought up that is a huge change from the last time we spoke is the Panthers trading up from 9 to 1 with the Bears.
That did happen.
Because that changes the whole dynamic of the top 5. Because now, the Panthers are almost certainly taking either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I've even heard some reports that they're looking at Richardson at number 1. Which is crazy because I remember at the beginning of this, he was like fringe 1st rounder. And now after that combine performance, they're like, this guy's going to be the best player ever. And I love Richardson. It doesn't even seem like we're going to get a chance at one of those 3 guys now, because Panthers, Texans, You got the Cardinals at 3. I see them probably trying to trade down, if anything. But the plus side of that is there's a decent chance Will Anderson falls to us, and that would be pretty fucking exciting.
Well, yeah. Going back to the quarterbacks thing, I could definitely see the Panthers taking Richardson, purely because I feel like their coach, Frank Reich, he didn't really get a chance to have his own project of a quarterback in Indianapolis.
He had Carson
He was
Wentz.
a quarterback. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe that's who he'll try and mold and bring up.
They did sign Andy Dalton too, so they don't have to start Richardson.
I thought
right
Andy
away.
Dalton signed with
I'm pretty sure he signed
the Colts. I know the Colts signed Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Andy Dalton went to the Panthers.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking Colts because Frank Reich was just the Colts coach, but he's the Panthers now.
Oh, okay, yeah, went to the Panthers.
Just a little mix up.
Colts got Minshew. So
Colts got Minshew.
Both of those teams, you know, if it comes down to it, could go with the veteran to start the year. I think both those teams are drafting a quarterback though, and that's what I was getting at. Is the Colts sitting there at number 4? I feel like they're just taking whoever is left.
God, poor Minshew. He's like always in quarterback competition, no matter where he goes.
Yeah.
And I feel like he always does good, but the guy that he's competing against is like a number 1 pick.
Yeah, he's got a very similar career arc to like Jacoby Brissett, I feel like. They're both like, you know, people think of them as like the 34th best quarterback in the league in a given year, or like a Fitzmagic, you know?
Well, yeah, it is kind of like Fitzmagic, but like with a little bit more like somehow swag to him. Honestly, like I saw a play that Minshew was making the other day when he signed with Indianapolis, and he like stepped up into the pocket, like was moving around, and then like threw a ball to the corner of the end zone, like on the run. And I was like, if he's making plays like that, he is capable of being a starter.
Yeah, I definitely think he is too. I think the thing with Minshew is his physical limitations. A team looks at him and then they look at someone like, even like Will Levis, and they're like, Will Levis is a bigger guy. Will Levis is probably a faster guy. He can throw the ball further and all that. But the thing is, Minshew's a better quarterback than him, you know, like just looking at it objectively and experience and accuracy and all those things. But I feel like organizations these days want the physical freak for the theoretical upside of, you know, having the big, strong, fast uber athlete at the position. And I think a lot of that is driven just based off of like Mahomes fever, Josh Allen fever, like all these, you know, freaks that we've had come out in the last decade that have just set the league on fire. It's really changed the way people look at the quarterback position. And even Carson Wentz, you look at his first couple of years, like he put up an MVP caliber season in 2017 and then has kind of sucked ass since then. But
well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Carson Wentz ran the ball a lot. Didn't he do read option and all that? And then he hurt his ACL and kind of stopped seeing a lot of that, or a lot of success from that, mind you.
I don't know how often he was like running to run, but he scrambled a fuck ton to throw for sure. Because I remember I was at the Eagles game in 2017 when the Seahawks were playing them. And he had a throw where he was flushed out to the right side and threw it like 60 yards downfield to Nelson Aguilar. And I was like, how the fuck did he do that? He was getting tackled when he threw it.
Yeah.
So like,
it's bizarre to think about like the good days of Carson Wentz, because he was really good that year.
Yeah, he was insane.
Yeah. And
he looked like Mahomes before Mahomes that year.
Yeah. And now you think about Wentz and you like pity the guy.
Yeah. He's been on 3 teams in 3 years. He just got cut by the fucking Commanders.
Yeah, that's not good.
Being replaced by Sam Howell,
He's probably out
pick.
of the league. I mean,
I feel like, you know, maybe he hasn't signed to this point because he's probably only getting opportunities to be a backup. But I think at this point in his career, that's what he's looking at. You know, the last couple of times he's had a chance. I thought he did okay in Indianapolis, but that last game is just like a stain, you know, that all they had to do was beat the worst fucking team, the Jaguars, and they got their ass beat and missed the playoffs. But back to what you were saying earlier, I definitely think the Colts are like all in on drafting a QB with Frank Reich because they've gone. I mean, Phillip Rivers was playing for them a little bit ago. They've just had a like merry-go-round of veteran quarterbacks at their position basically since Andrew Luck died.
No, not basically. Like, that is the reality.
Yeah.
Every season they've had a new quarterback since he's left. So, yeah, I could see them definitely, like, absolutely, they're going to take a quarterback, even though they have Minshew. Like,
yeah,
without question.
And back to the Bears, I think the Bears are making really good moves right now because not only did they get a first and a second in the future from the Panthers with that trade, they also got DJ Moore, who's a really good receiver. And what they're doing right now is they're doubling down on Justin Fields, who's, you know, extremely talented, but a little bit of a question mark. I think the dumbest things NFL teams do is they have a talented young quarterback on a shitty roster and they suck for 2 years because they're on a terrible team. And then they're like, okay, well, we need to draft a new quarterback because this isn't working. And they just keep doing that. Like the Jets, for example.
Yeah.
So the Bears took full advantage of the cap space that they had and signed like every top free agent this week. And they even got a guy like Donta Foreman, who is not a superstar, but he put up really good numbers in Carolina last year, and he's going to be their RB2.
Yeah, he's shown that he can perform while being in a committee.
Yeah. And what is it? Khalil Herbert is also on the Bears now. I don't really know. Is he good? I don't know anything about him.
I mean, he's okay. He's a backup running back on the Bears. He's about as good as you would expect, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense to me. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this top of the draft plays out in about 6 weeks, because we haven't brought it up, but you heard about Jalen Carter's pro day, right?
Yeah, it was bad.
He showed up looking like a tub of goo.
And he couldn't do anything because he kept cramping up.
Yeah. The legal situation has been resolved, so he's not facing any jail time. But you couple that with the previously seen reports of the character concerns with him, plus showing up to your pro day, basically your job interview, and just looking so not prepared. It's a really muddy situation right now, because you turn on the tape, he is the best player in this draft, like no question. But these concerns are legitimate, and you know he's only 21 years old, which at a certain point I kind of feel bad for, because he's literally just a huge kid, and he's dealing with, you know, criminal charges and the loss of a teammate that I'm sure he was friends with.
I was gonna say maybe that has something to do with the overweight and not being able to perform.
Everything
because
to do with it.
Yeah, if you have the most golden opportunity ever in front of you and the potential of being a number 1 overall pick in the NFL, and then this befalls you. I mean, granted, he made the choices, so it's not like the world is against him or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's like these things happen, and he's got to like answer to the consequences. And people make mistakes, and he probably feels horrible, and probably feels horrible for the loss of a teammate. And yeah, I mean,
I'm genuinely concerned for his mental health, is what I'm trying to say. I think of how I was at 21, and I can't imagine dealing with all of this at once. Like, you're not emotionally fully developed or even close to it when you're a 21-year-old man, and being in the situation he is with all of the media suddenly, you know, watch, they're going to start calling him a thug or this or that, because they always do this, especially with certain players.
Yeah.
And so I look at it and I'm like, is he a huge risk at 5? Yes. Yeah, it's very scary and risky, but just because of the prospect of it not working, like, you can't miss with a top 5 pick, you know, that sets you back. But on the other hand, it's like Pete Carroll has been willing to take a swing on a guy with character concerns in the past, and I could give you countless examples, but let's just start with the biggest one, Marshawn Lynch. You know, the Bills gave up on him because of basically the off the field stuff. Look how that turned out. Bruce Irvin is another example. That guy people don't talk about it. He had one of the craziest combines ever for an edge rusher. He ran a 4.4, being a 250-pound outside linebacker, defensive end. That today would be elite combine performance, like Nolan Smith level. He had a ton of off the field concerns coming into the draft. So I do believe in Pete's ability to manage guys like that and just the culture that we have here. But what do you think about that? Because I do think there's like a 90% chance that we're going to get a chance to draft him.
Excuse me. I wanted to bring up something that reminded me of bringing out the best in players. Before I answer that, well, I guess I'll just answer that. Yeah, I think we should take him at 5 if he is available. Mm-hmm. And I do think it's because Pete is the best at bringing the best out of his players and letting them be themselves. And I remember an episode of Hard Knocks that the Lions were in at the start of the season. I think it was the running backs coach. He was talking about Jamal Williams and how they let Jamal Williams do all of the weird things that he does in interviews and wears all the like Pokemon stuff, which honestly I think it's cool because I mean that's what we grew up with, so I like it.
I was almost hoping we'd sign him just because I think he's hilarious.
Yeah, and he was talking about how like if the coaching staff doesn't allow him to be himself like that and in that environment, you probably don't get the most out of him that he gives to the team. And I feel like Pete Carroll, that is his language.
That's his MO.
Yeah, that's how he is successful, is he brings the best out of his players, even the knuckleheads and the guys with fire like DK Metcalf. I feel like Pete Carroll likes that sort of edgy, loose cannon type of personality in a player. Like, oh, this is a different breed of a person. Mm-hmm. They're going to give it their all, and they got a little bit of a fire to them. And
and that's something that to me that screams like Seahawk, doesn't it? Like just guy who's pretty unorthodox but has like a special quality about them. That's literally in Pete's introductory press conference in 2010. He mentioned that exact term. Basically, that's his MO. So I like, if I were to make a tier list of my reaction to what we do at number 5, Jalen Carter would probably be in like its own tier as like probably best move we could make on paper, but also I'm really nervous about it, just because like, think of like Malik McDowell, and that was a 2nd round pick. So it's tough. It's definitely tough, but I think there's a really good chance we're going to get the opportunity to draft either him or Anderson at 5. So
it's tough. If both of them are there, who are you taking?
The thing is, like, theoretically, it's like, okay, Will Anderson is a no-brainer, but Jalen Carter is so much more of a, like, we have a decent crop of edge rushers. And there's a lot of edge rushers we can get at 20 or with our 2 2nd-round picks or even with the 3rd-round pick. And I think Will Anderson is your starter day one, and he's a Pro Bowl type player. But I think if you can get the best out of Jalen Carter, like we're talking like Hall of Fame level ability with him.
Right.
And I don't know, like with Will Anderson, I think you were literally getting like basically what Von Miller is right now, right away, but you're not getting 2012 Von Miller. That was one of the most explosive. Like Will Anderson ran a 4.6. That's good. He has all these good measurables, but his prowess is more of just how solid of a player he is,
Right.
Like, so.
And you also look at edge rushers, like you were just saying, they're kind of a dime a dozen, whereas a player like Jalen Carter, they're a lot more difficult to find, a player like that. And I've heard the Ndamukong Suh comps and all that, and that sounds like a Hall of Fame player to me.
Like Warren Sapp, for example, or like he's way bigger than Aaron Donald. So like I say Aaron Donald, but he's a totally different type of player.
Isn't that bizarre? Thinking someone is way bigger than Aaron Donald.
like at least like 20 pounds heavier and like 5 inches taller or something. But yeah, just think about having a defensive front that has Jalen Carter on it and Jermonte Jones. Like just those 2 guys right there, that's like one of the top 3-4 fronts in the league.
Yeah.
The main thing we got to do after that point, and there's a guy named Mozzie Smith who's a big hulking, because we need a nose tackle is what I'm getting at. I've heard reports we might be cutting Al Woods.
Oh, it's a bummer.
He's like 36, 37.
He was productive.
I like Al Woods. I'd be totally fine.
I almost worry about that, though. I feel like he's like a Red Bryant. Remember how shitty our defense was after we let him go? Well, we went back to the Super Bowl after we cut him, but even still, he was a big loss to our defense.
Yeah, he was a really unique player himself. Like, he was like the biggest defensive end of all time.
I'm just hesitant on letting go of Al Woods for that reason. Well, because of the memories of losing Red Bryant.
I'm with you. I also just think there's a decent chance he retired. Like, he soft retired after 2019. He didn't play the COVID year.
Yeah.
And we basically were like, hey, you want to come back in 2020 or 2021 or what? Or it was 2021.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like, it'd be great to bring him back, but at his age and the position he plays, there's just really good chance it's like not going to work out.
Yeah.
But there is a guy in Mozzie Smith or Siaki Ika. He's the other like pure nose tackle in this draft. I'm not as high on Ika. He just doesn't seem, he's so slow. It's like you're basically just there to take up space.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you have really good 3-4 ends in Jalen Carter and Draymond Jones, it makes that need a little less of a need.
It makes being there to take up space make a little bit more sense.
Yeah. So maybe maybe I've just talked myself into getting Siaka Ika. And like,
you just covered all the bases and you're like, well, actually, this makes sense.
Yeah. But so the moves we made in free agency basically have made me feel like at every spot we're picking this year, we can take pretty much any position besides like Jesus Christ. If they pick a fucking safety in the first round, I'm going to shit my pants.
They won't do that. I hope. Holy shit.
I think that's the only thing they could do that would actually make me angry. Or like if they took
or a tight end.
I was going to say that too, but even then you're like, well, okay, at least I can kind of talk myself into it. But then you're like, okay, well, we have 4 tight ends on the roster. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I would be down to trade Noah Fant and get like Darnell Washington in round 2 though. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Because he brings something different to the table. And, also Colby Parkinson kind of looked like the better player towards the end of last year.
It was a relief seeing him have some hands out there.
Yeah. Remember when we met him last year?
Huge.
Like, he kept walking and it was like he blocked out the sun. He's so tall.
Yeah, he's really nice too. Like,
yeah.
One of the nicer guys that, like, he was one of the, I mean, they all were busy, but like he like took the time of day to talk to you. And I mean, I was standing there too, but I was like shell shocked. I had nothing to say.
Yeah, that was a cool day. We should try to go to that training camp thing like a few times. Cause what was it, like $30 or something?
Yeah.
And it was
not
really
even
fun.
that. I think I paid like $26 for 2.
It might be fun if we just do that like 3 weekends in a row. So this podcast is just like the training camp report during the summer.
I think we should do that because that would just be beneficial for us and for the listeners, those of you that out there.
All 20 of you. We appreciate every single one of you. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we've pretty much wrapped up everything that's happened Seahawks wise in the last week. I haven't seen any other news come down the wire in the last 20 minutes or so. So
watch, we're gonna end this podcast and then Lamar Jackson's gonna get traded,
and Bobby Wagner
and Aaron Rodgers. Like, everyone is going to go to their respective teams.
Speaking of which, we should talk about Aaron Rodgers before we sign off. Because did you listen to his interview with Pat?
Kind of. I saw like bits and pieces of it, like little clips here and there on the internet. What are you referring to? Are you referring to the 90% retirement, or are you referring to the Adam Schefter thing?
Oh, the Adam Schefter thing I just thought was funny because he was like, lose my number. But I just think Aaron Rodgers is such a strange character, man, because he basically just kind of like contradicted what he had said earlier, like immediately, because he's like, well, before I went into the darkness, the Packers were like, all right, take your time. We'll give you as much time as you want, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was already hearing swirling rumors about him going to the Jets before he even did this. Mm-hmm. So that didn't really seem to match up with me. And and like him going 90% retired going into it, I don't know. I mean, I'll take him at his word for it, but I feel like Rodgers he has kind of a really overinflated ego. Is what every time I listen to him, I'm just like, this guy just has this like air of smugness about him that I can't fucking get past. And so just listening to him act like the Packers front office wasn't being fair to him, and I'm like, dude, you didn't even show up to training camp last year. You're doing all this weird shit in your own time, which I think is cool and interesting, but like you're not making it easier on your team dealing with it. So it's a weird situation, and I think the craziest thing to me is like it's the Jets. It's at age 39 after his whatever 15th season. Why is this just Brett Favre round 2? Like almost beat for beat.
Well, the funniest thing about it to me is even though he debunked the rumors and said they weren't true about him having the Jets in a chokehold and having this list of demands and the Jets going after all these players and signing them, like Alan Lazard, for example, that's just so funny. Like if he doesn't go to the Jets and then just has them do all these moves and then it's like, all right, I'm going to stay with Green Bay. They just are like,
dude, and then Green Bay's fucked because they're already like propping up Jordan Love and seeming to like move on. And now they're like, oh fuck, we got to pay Aaron Rodgers $60 million. We can't sign anybody or do anything.
Why did they do that? That was such a weird move. And then they got rid of Davante Adams. It's like you should have gotten rid of Rodgers, kept Adams, and drafted who you drafted for receivers, and then you could build around Jordan Love.
Yeah, imagine Davante Adams, Christian Watson. I mean, Dobbs is okay. That's a really good 3-receiver set there.
Yeah.
And instead, they're in this weird situation. And I keep seeing these reports that the Packers are willing to take this all the way to the draft before they make a move. Why? You are hamstringing your own team by not being able to sign people by doing this. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. And the other teams in the NFC North are only getting better. Detroit and Chicago, I feel like, are going to be the two. Weirdly enough, they are never the two that are fighting for the division, but I think this is the first time we're going to be seeing it.
You look at it on paper, like the Bears made themselves a lot better this week.
Yeah.
And they still have the 9th pick and a whole bunch of other draft capital to swing here. Something you brought up that I think is really curious is the prospect of then getting a Bijan Robinson. Mm-hmm. That would be a really electric. The read option with Bijan and Justin Fields.
I think they were going to do that because
that would be fucking crazy.
Why would they not do that?
I think
you don't have a running back anymore.
I think. Well, they signed.
Yeah, I mean, you have Foreman, but you let a guy walk that was a trusted player in your organization for 4 years.
I think the one thing they may end up doing is getting like an offensive tackle or something because they're right in that range where they could get a top tackle in this draft. Or they could also go after Smith and Jigba at number 9. He played with Justin Fields in college for a season, I think.
They might try to do that. Burrow, Chase.
Yeah.
Carbon copy.
And think of a 3-receiver set with him in the slot, and then you have David or DJ Moore outside and either
Claypool on the other end
or Mooney. I don't really know who of those two is better.
Those would be 4 good receivers. I think, as I've said before, I think that Chase Claypool is kind of a chump, but
I think so too. But if he's your wide receiver 3, that's pretty good. I mean, that's better than our wide receiver 3 by a good chunk, I would say. Mm-hmm. But if he's your wide receiver 1, like, you're fucked, which is
what they were in last year.
Exactly. So, I mean, that offense on paper is a lot more scary than the Vikings have, they still have Dalvin Cook and the Justin Jefferson, but I don't know. I see the tides turning towards the Lions and the Bears a lot more this year.
Yeah, it was Packers Vikings for ages, and now it's no longer that. No longer the case.
And I'm here for it because I'm fucking sick of both those teams. The Vikings are just destined to lose in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs every year. And the Packers have been destined to lose in the championship.
The Vikings are like the 2014 or 2015 to 2020 Seahawks, but like forever.
That fucking sucks. Because like I'm like, damn, you're right, but it's funny. Like all those years as they're going by, it felt like we were still on this special thing, and we were gonna get back to the Super Bowl this year. But like looking back at it, it's just like we never had a fucking chance.
I never thought we were gonna go to the Super Bowl ever from that time period. Honestly, I thought we sucked. I mean, I didn't think we sucked, but I thought we were like the year we won the division and then the Rams kicked our ass. I was really mad that game, but I was also like not surprised.
That was, I felt like the last good chance we had in 2019. Like we were an average team that was overperforming, but it was fun. And that was Wilson's. I think that was Wilson's best year. Because the level of difficulty he was playing under that season was insane. Mm-hmm. And the half of our wins were fourth quarter comebacks. It was crazy. But the wheels started to fall off in 2020. And yeah, by the end of the year, I was like, I'm just glad we're making the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But remember, we started off 5-0 that year, and it was like
that was the best start we've ever had.
Yeah, and we were putting up like 38 points a game or something crazy like that.
So much promise to only come crashing down like violently, immediately
by our most hated rival at home.
Yeah, thankfully no fans were there. That made it a little better.
Yeah, that's easier to stomach, I think. But yeah, speaking of our division, I think if we can split the series with the 49ers, which I know, big if, they whooped our ass 3 times last year. But, dude, the Rams and the Cardinals are going to suck ass next year. They're both in really cap hell. Kyler Murray, torn ACL, coach, Gannon.
Which we'll play that sound bite in post.
Let's have some fun.
Buckle up. That just reminds me of buckle up, buckaroo.
I'm surprised nobody's done that face swap.
That's maybe immediately what I thought.
Maybe we can start that, and then that's how this podcast will take off.
Yeah, that's how we get our kickoff.
But I think just looking at the landscape of the NFC, especially with Rodgers going to the AFC, I mean, every good quarterback is in the AFC pretty much, besides Hurts, Geno, I guess, Stafford, Carr, I don't know, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, Matt Stafford, to me, they've all been around the 18th to 14th best quarterbacks for fucking ever. Mm-hmm. So I'm not afraid of any of those guys. It's like the Eagles and the Niners, top 2 teams in the conference. I think, maybe you say the Lions are even the 3rd best and we're the 4th. I don't know. But
you think the Cowboys, they have a really good defense.
Yeah, I guess the Cowboys. I just never consider them because I'm like, well, they're gonna lose before they get to the NFC Championship. It's illegal for them to not do that.
Yeah.
So I'm just not worried about them. And I guess, I don't know, the Giants, but they just gave Daniel Jones a fucking golden fucking contract for no reason when he threw 15 touchdowns. So now they're fucked. They have their running back who is injury prone on the franchise tag. It's a mess.
Yeah.
They quickly went from a promising upstart team to cap strapped losers.
Yeah. It's
overnight.
all because of Daniel Jones.
Yeah. He did just mediocre enough to have any amount of leverage in the contract negotiations. I don't know why. If I'm the Giants, I would have just been okay, walk. We'll sign fucking Derek Carr or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
I guess with that in mind, the Saints could be sneaky. I don't know.
No, I don't think so.
The NFC is going to get their ass kicked in every AFC interconference game next year.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you make a top 12 quarterback list, 10 of them are in the AFC right now.
Well, I mean, it was the opposite for the 2010s. The NFC had all the dominant quarterbacks, and now they're all old and retiring, or retired, or on their way out the door.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's a lot of why Brady made it to all those AFC championships and Super Bowls.
And it's like, all those bad AFC teams got their franchise quarterback eventually, and now it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I guess I haven't thought about it that way, but you're totally right.
Yeah, like those teams, the Jaguars, the Bengals, the Texans are going to get their franchise quarterback for the third time because they are always bad. But yeah, those teams, they just have their guy now because they sucked forever and they got so many opportunities at the first round pick or the first overall pick, like Trevor Lawrence to Jacksonville.
I think it's so funny the Jets don't have Trevor Lawrence because they decided to beat the Rams in 2020.
And they got Zach Wilson. Just garbage.
But who's to say that they wouldn't have turned Trevor Lawrence into Zach Wilson? Like, I think quarterback success has a lot to do with where they end up. You know?
I mean, I don't know. The Jets coach seems like a good guy. He's the Robert Saleh.
Did they have him when they drafted Zach Wilson, though?
Yeah. I think that was his first year, last year. So
maybe I'm just too hard on them because their fans talk so much shit about the Jamal Adams trade, and I'm sick of it.
I don't even know a Jets fan.
I spend too much time on the internet. But it's interesting. This draft, we got to nail it. But basically all this to say we have a really good shot at being something special next year, I think, which even a few weeks ago, I didn't think was going to be the case.
Yeah, it's certainly promising, especially seeing all these signings today, making my worries go away about the linebacker position. Not entirely, but it certainly answers some questions.
I'd like to see us draft a linebacker or two still, for sure.
Agreed. I'm just saying, like, as far as we had nobody at the position
Nick
prior
Bellore
to today.
was going to be a starting linebacker like a week ago, given where our roster was.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm excited to see what happens in the upcoming weeks and even on draft day, obviously.
Indeed, yeah, we got just under 6 weeks until we hit that point. Maybe we will get a little video action coming at you guys between now and then. We'll see.
Yeah.
You know, we keep talking about it, but it'll happen.
It'll happen.
It'd be fun, man. We'll at the very least have some reaction videos during the draft, like sitting there or standing there with everybody when we go up to make the pick at number 5. We gotta film that.
Yeah, we will.
That's gonna be a big moment.
All right, well, we've been JR Takes once again, and sounding off. Thanks for listening.
Yep, catch you on the next one.